Caffeine, our collective comfort, our cultural lifeblood, it has become so deeply woven into who we think we are that questioning it almost feels like rebellious, listeners. We drink it to wake up, to work harder, to stay sharp. But have you ever questioned that what if it is quietly dimming the very light we are trying to keep alive? Now, many a times, awakening, it doesn't happen under a full moon or through meditation. It happens maybe mid-sip, halfway through a cup of coffee. You suddenly realize you don't actually want. Well, listeners, today on this episode of the Cosmic Confluence podcast with your host Sana, we are not just talking about coffee. We are unpacking energy, the kind we borrow, the kind we build, and the kind we lose without even noticing. And my guest, Steve Frazier, knows this terrain intimately. He is the founder of Release the Coffee Cuffs, which is a program for people who want to quit caffeine without quitting life. And he is also the author of Winning the Battle with Caffeine. So, listeners, let me tell you that this isn't a coffee is bad conversation. It is a consciousness one about how our bodies, minds, and even our souls respond when the world tells us to run faster, but on less real energy. So, with that, Steve, welcome to the show. And as always, it is really, really illuminating to have you here with us.
Thank you for that great introduction, Santa. It's a pleasure to be here.
Superb. So, Steve, although I mentioned about awareness a bit later in the intro, but let's start with talking about it, where most of us never do. You have said that caffeine wasn't energizing you; it was actually exhausting you. So, though we may know the moments, but within you, what was that realization, that feeling of realization like? Was it that you started to judge yourself or your decisions? Or, what exactly was going through you?
Well, my relationship here with caffeine changed dramatically 11 years ago. And I had a medical issue. I thought I was having a heart attack. I was driving in my car. I was 45 minutes from home. And I turned around, I called my wife. I said, I think I'm having a heart attack. I should have went to hospital, but I drove home 45 minutes. She took me to the emergency room and they hooked me up to an EKG machine. And I had something called premature ventricular contractions, which everybody has. However, I happen to be maybe 3 to 5% of the people that can really feel them. And it felt like I was having a heart attack. It felt like my heart was jumping out of my chest. And I could see the palpitations on the EKG. And the doctor came in and he said, "You're going to be fine." He explained to me what was going on, the PCs. And I said, "So what's causing this?" He said, "Well, stress." And I said, "Well, everybody has stress." And he said, "Yes." He said, "But that combined with," and then he paused and he said, "caffeine." And he smirked a little bit because I had been loading up on caffeine that morning on my trip. I was about to drive 3 hours, work for 6 hours, and then drive 3 hours home. So I was drinking coffee and energy drinks all day to stay active. I was on my feet the whole time that I wasn't driving. So I decided that I didn't need caffeine in my life. So I quit. And like every good addict, I thought I had it under control. So a year or two later, I started to drink it again. And I drank it for 8 years. And 2 years ago, I quit cold turkey, which I would not recommend you do because it's brutal. You get massive headaches, massive brain fog, massive fatigue. And there's no way to get away from those side effects when you go cold turkey unless you just drink more caffeine. Well, then you defeated the purpose of quitting. So, you mentioned energy. And, energy, caffeine and coffee and tea and energy drinks are directly related to the energy that we feel and deal with on a daily basis. And it's interesting that our bodies are beautifully and wonderfully made. And they're designed for when you get up in the morning, your cortisol goes up. And cortisol is a stress hormone. But you naturally, your cortisol goes up because that's what gives you the energy to start your day. So when I wake up, I look at the sun, and now it happens to be dark when I wake up, so I have a sun lamp, and that helps to boost my cortisol a little bit more naturally. And then throughout the day, my cortisol goes down, and my melatonin and my adenosine goes up. Now, that's the natural circadian rhythm of your body. And that's energy, right? I mean, this is how we are. We're energetic beings. Now, also when I get up, I drink 24 ounces of lemon water, which rehydrates my cells because we dehydrate overnight.
Yeah.
So probably several billion people in the world, the first thing they do when they get up is they drink caffeine, whether it's coffee or tea or a soda or energy drink, because they have established a routine of rinse and repeat. I need more caffeine, and realize if people drink chronic caffeine use, which is over what I consider over 200 milligrams a day, which is not a lot when you consider how much is in an energy drink or in a cup of coffee. And a small tangent here, they changed the size of the cup. Okay, so when somebody says a cup of coffee, used to be 8 ounces, then it went to 10, then it went to 12, then it went to 16, then now it's 20 often. So what your cup of coffee now could be like 2 or 3 cups of coffee 5 or 10 years ago. So when you drink caffeine first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, several things happen. First of all, it's a diuretic. Caffeine is a diuretic, so you immediately need to go to the bathroom. Well, when you go, you don't just get rid of water, you also get rid of minerals, and particularly calcium and magnesium, which are really important for your body, for growth. Magnesium is great for sleeping at night and for cramps. And so you're depleting that. So if you don't supplement that, you are going to be deficient in those minerals and several others. So the next thing that happens is that immediately upon thinking about drinking the coffee, you get a dopamine hit. Dopamine is a hormone that makes you feel good. It's your natural feel-good hormone. And most of the dopamine is released actually before you take that first cup, just in anticipation, but you do feel good. The second thing that happens is that your cortisol goes up. Caffeine activates the adrenal glands to release more cortisol.
Okay.
Now, you would think that this would be good, but you already are releasing cortisol in your body naturally, because when you wake up, you need that to start your day. So now you're double dosing. And if you only do this one time in the morning, it may not have a whole lot of effect on your circadian rhythm, because your body has an opportunity to recharge throughout the day. But if you drink coffee throughout the morning, even into the afternoon, or soda with caffeine or an energy drink, realize every time you drink caffeine or you eat a chocolate bar, because it has caffeine in it, you actually spike your cortisol. Now, cortisol is a stress hormone. And so that, in combination with another thing that happens, the third thing that happens when you drink caffeine, is you spike adrenaline. Again, that comes through the adrenal gland. And you don't control this. We as humans, we don't control what happens in our bodies. Now, when I talk about these things, these are all generalities. There's always exceptions, because each one of us processes caffeine differently. However, we can't stop the biology and the science of the caffeine molecule. So what happens when the adrenaline gets released? Well, adrenaline is a stress hormone, just like cortisol, and it's fight or flight. It's a fight or flight hormone. And what's going to happen is that unless you're fighting or flighting, okay, so if you're in danger, let's say somebody's attacking you, your adrenaline kicks in. Let's say you're running from a lion, a tiger, a bear. Oh my, what happens is that your body pumps in glucose into your muscles because you need that. You need your extra muscles in order to fight or flight. But you are perhaps sitting at your kitchen table, kitchen counter, reading a newspaper, enjoying your cup of coffee. You're not fighting or flighting. Then you go to work. You have a cup of coffee, wherever that may be. What happens? It activates adrenaline. It floods your body. You're not fighting or flighting. So you have this extra glucose in your body. Well, now your pancreas says, whoa, we've got a spike in glucose. So I need to pump some insulin into your body to counteract the sugar. And so you now are going to put some pressure on your pancreas as well as your adrenal gland. So every time you do this, this happens. And again, we don't control this. This is the natural reaction to caffeine. And so it's a cycle, and in the book that I wrote, there's 14 chapters in the middle that have over 300 references. And in each chapter, we talk about it's rinse and repeat. It's a cycle. And because what happens is if you don't continue to drink caffeine, you're going to crash because you're getting this dopamine high, you're getting this adrenaline high, you're getting this cortisol high. And you're also, and here's an ironic thing, and a lot of people don't know about adenosine. Adenosine is what naturally puts you to sleep at night. And there's receptors in your brain. And as you go through your day, more adenosine molecules go into those receptors. So when you're ready to go to sleep at night, whether that's 10 or 11 o'clock, whatever the case may be for you individually, now your body is saying, yep, it's time to go to sleep. This is your circadian rhythm. Now, the caffeine molecule is very similar to the adenosine molecule. And so what happens is that it plugs the adenosine receptor, and so you don't get tired. Now, if this only happens once, and then those adenosine receptors open up, you're probably okay. But as you do this throughout the day, your adenosine receptors become full all the time, so you never get tired. And also, as you consume more caffeine, your brain actually produces more adenosine receptors because it is signaling to your body that you want to go to sleep, and so I'm going to create more adenosine receptors. What happens? You drink more caffeine, you keep plugging them up. Now, when you wake up in the morning, oftentimes people will have beginning of a headache. And that's because the adenosine receptors are opening up. Realize they're supposed to open up 8 or 10 hours ago when you went to sleep. Now they're opening up in the morning, and you're going to start to get a headache because that's what happens when you quit drinking caffeine, is that the adenosine receptors open up and you have this massive blood flow to your brain. You're going to get a really big headache. And then you're also going to get brain fog and fatigue because remember, adenosine is what puts you to sleep, and now they're open. And so, and this happened to me 2 years ago. I quit cold turkey, massive headache, massive brain fog. I don't recommend that. I recommend a tapering, very slow tapering, anywhere from 1 to 6 to 8 weeks if you want. It doesn't matter. If you're actually going to quit, don't punish yourself by quitting cold turkey. You can, but I would advise that you budget some time away from all other humans. How's that? Because you're not going to be a fun person to be around. You're going to be crabby, you're tired, you're going to have a massive headache. And what I would suggest to your listeners is that if they're going to stay on caffeine, and that's okay, because I'm not here to judge or shame you, because it's your body. We all have free will and free won't. So what I would recommend is that the first thing when you wake up in the morning, instead of having caffeine right away, have a substantial amount of lemon water. And what that does is it rehydrates your cells, maybe have a little breakfast, and then have your first cup of coffee or tea. It's going to give your body a little opportunity to start its natural circadian rhythm. And what happens, caffeine affects men and women differently, and particularly men with blood pressure, because realize the adrenaline is pumping up and that increases your heart rate, increases your blood pressure. Well, if you're doing this all the time, your blood pressure just is up all the time. And it also affects the testosterone in the man's body, because cortisol and testosterone are not friends. They don't get along. So the more cortisol you have in your body, the less testosterone you're going to have. And we're going to get to the sleep cycle in just a minute. But so in other words, the more caffeine you drink, the less testosterone you're going to have. Now, what does that do to the man? Well, first of all, his libido goes down. Okay. And another thing that happens is that his sperm are fractured. So the mobility, the motility are lower. They don't swim as good as they're supposed to. So this can have an effect on possibly conceiving a child, because now we'll go to the woman. What happens to her when she drinks caffeine? Well, some of the same things with the adenosine, the adrenaline, the dopamine. However, women are affected differently at different times of their menstrual cycle. So as an example, in the luteal phase, which is the last phase, it's 14 to 28 days before the period, woman processes caffeine 70% slower.
Wow.
Because there's more estrogen in the body. Now, this is also with birth control pills, because birth control pills have a lot of estrogen in them. So you realize that a half-life of caffeine is 5 to 8 hours. So you take 70% on top of that, that's 8 to 12 hours. So if you have a cup of coffee of 150 milligrams at noon and nothing after that, then potentially the half-life at 10 o'clock is 75 milligrams. You still have 75 milligrams of caffeine in your body because your liver is not processing this. It also decreases the blood flow to the uterus, so you have less blood flow to your egg. Now, you take a man and a woman who are trying to conceive, and they're both drinking caffeine. And when I say these things, these are not absolutes. They're generalities. But if you take both of those partners and they're trying to have a baby and they're both drinking caffeine, it could lead to not being able to conceive. Okay, so, but we both know that people that drink caffeine have babies, because they don't. Okay, so that is, however, if you are trying to conceive and you can't, this could be an indicator that caffeine is influencing your conception. Now, my mission in what I'm doing by writing the book and speaking and coming on your podcast and many other podcasts is this is a micro mission. My general mission is to inform. And because realize I can't make anybody quit coffee or tea or caffeine, and I have no desire. In fact, I've handed my book to friends and family, and the first thing they say is, you can't take my coffee from me. And I look at them and I say, I have no intention of taking your coffee from you, because I can't, because you control it. However, I would like you and everyone that's listening, perhaps you know someone that's having some of these side effects, whether it's blood pressure, whether it's, and caffeine aggravates PMS symptoms dramatically. And so it's important for women to know, okay, because the caffeine isn't being processed, especially in that last 14 days, it's staying in your body longer. It's going to make it worse. And ironically, many of the over-counter PMS medications have a lot of caffeine in them. So what happens to mom when she gets pregnant and she's still drinking caffeine? Well, the caffeine goes all the way to the baby, right through the placenta, right through the blood-brain barrier. And you think, well, that's okay. Baby can handle this. However, we process caffeine in our livers through an enzyme called CPY182. Okay, there's no test on it, but that's what it is. Now, here's the unique, interesting thing. Babies don't develop that enzyme until they're 3 to 6 months old after birth. And so if mom drinks caffeine the whole pregnancy, baby has no way to process it, the fetus. And then what happens is that when the baby is born, and again, this is not the only reason babies cry when they're born. However, just imagine you've been on caffeine for 9 months, you come out, you're born, and 12 hours later, all those adenosine receptors open up. What's the natural reaction? They scream bloody murder because they've got a killer headache. And this can last 12 to 9 days. And what's the common response? Oh, it's colicky, this is normal. Okay. Now, granted, it is normal probably in a lot of babies, but as in moms that are addicted to drugs, when the doctors know this and the baby's born, they go into and they detox the babies very slowly from the drugs, and they have ways to do this. Does anybody ever consider caffeine when it comes to the baby detoxing? Maybe rare. Okay, I'm not saying that somebody doesn't recognize this, but I believe, and my message is, please recognize this. Okay, if you're going to drink caffeine throughout the process, let your doctor know that your baby's going to detox, because you eat, and even if you breastfeed, there's a small amount of caffeine transferred in breast milk, but not enough to compensate for that withdrawal. And I'm not going to tell you, because I'm not giving you medical advice on what to do, but you should be aware of this. Now, what caffeine also does to the fetus, it is, again, these are things that can lead to low birth weight. They can lead to miscarriage. They can lead to stillbirth. They can lead to ADD, ADHD, developmental issues as the child grows up, because it hasn't formed. Some of these things haven't formed properly in the womb because mom has been on caffeine. And so my message is of love. If you love someone, please share this message, because perhaps you know someone that is going through some of these things. I had a podcast last night, and the guy said, I have friends, they're trying to conceive, they both drink caffeine, and they're struggling. And he said, I'm going to bring this up. Now, again, this isn't necessarily the reason, but it could be a contributing factor.
Could be, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, Steve, thank you, because, it's obvious that, we cannot force upon anyone to, make it stop or completely get rid of it, but through information and lived experience and the science behind it, logic and rational, I think it is definitely possible.
Yes. So if you have any questions, you can reach me at releasethecoffeecuffs.com. The book is also available there. It's also available on all Amazon, all major retailers, all major platforms. Amazon, Kindle. I'm going to do an Audible version over the winter. And you can send me an email, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. The email is on the contact list. It goes right to releasethecoffeecuffs.com at pm.me. And so I'll leave you with this. This is a wise saying from my wife, is that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. However, you can make it thirsty. And my job, my mission is to make people thirsty for information about caffeine, because it's a very, very well kept secret that caffeine is not good for you.
Okay. Yeah. And I think you know there's definitely kind of a challenge here. I think it will take its time, but I really, really appreciate that, you are putting your more than 100% efforts in educating people, uh, and, making them aware. Because, people would say that coffee is comfort. It's even a connector. Like it
Right.
brings people together. It sparks,
Yeah.
and it's delicious, aromatic and all that stuff.
Yeah. I agree.
I think
There's a there's a social aspect here that nobody really talks about. There's a lot of social pressure to drink caffeine. Yeah.
But I think we can work towards, just like you said, not going cold turkey, but like, step by step, taking baby steps towards moderation, rather than just, a blank, straight elimination.
I agree. Yes.
Logical. So, Steve, what I'll do for all the listeners is I'll have all the links and details in the show notes. And once again, I couldn't thank you enough for sharing your story and also the research that you have done, the efforts that you are making through your book, through appearing on podcasts and spreading the message out in there. So, thank you so much once again.
You're welcome. My pleasure. I also will have some links for your listeners that you can put in your show notes. There's some tools and trackers, and then there's about 10 articles on different aspects of how caffeine is affecting us. And so those are things you can share with your listeners. Okay.
Absolutely. I'll do that.
All right.
And listeners, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Cosmic Confluence. So whether you are holding a cup of tea or coffee or clarity right now, take a moment, breathe and notice. Until next time, this is your host, Sarah, signing off. Thank you.